The two that go together here would be chapter 17 and 18. As we have been doing in the past, let's read the text, first of all, in Revelation 17. And it says this, "And then one of the seven angels who had the seven bowls came and said to me, 'Come, and I will show you the judgment of the great harlot who is seated on many waters, with whom the kings of the earth have committed sexual immorality, and with the wine of whose sexual immorality the dwellers on earth have become drunk.' And he carried me away in the spirit into a wilderness. And I saw a woman sitting on a scarlet beast that was full of blasphemous names, and it had 7 heads and 10 horns. The woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet, and adorned with gold and jewels and pearls, holding in her hand a golden cup full of abominations and the impurities of her sexual immorality. And on her forehead was written a name of mystery, Babylon the Great, mother of prostitutes and of earth's abominations. And I saw the woman drunk with the blood of the saints, the blood of the martyrs of Jesus. And when I saw her, I marveled greatly. But the angel said to me, 'Why do you marvel? I will tell you the mystery of the woman and the beast with 7 heads and 10 horns that carries her. The beast that you saw was and is not, and is about to rise from the bottomless pit and to go to destruction. And the dwellers on earth, whose names have not been written in the book of life from the foundation of the world, will marvel to see the beast, because it was and is not and is to come. This calls for a mind with wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman is seated. They are also 7 kings, 5 of whom have fallen, 1 is, and the other has not yet come. And when he does come, he must remain only a little while. As for the beast that was and is not, it is an 8th, but it belongs to the 7, and it goes to destruction. And the 10 horns that you saw are 10 kings, who have not yet received royal power, but they are to receive authority as kings for 1 hour together with the beast. These are of one mind, and hand over their power and authority to the beast. They will make war on the Lamb, and the Lamb will conquer them, for he is Lord of lords and King of kings. And those that are with him are called, chosen, and faithful. And the angel said to me, the waters that you saw, where the prostitute is seated, are peoples, multitudes, nations, and languages. And the 10 horns that you saw, they and the beast will hate the prostitute. They will make her desolate and naked and devour her flesh and burn her up with fire. For God has put it in their hearts to carry out his purpose by being of one mind and handing over their royal power to the beast, until the words of God are fulfilled. And the woman that you saw is the great city that has dominion over the kings of the earth." All right, that's the reading of chapter 17. This is a key chapter in this book, along with many others, of course. But this one also gives us some additional information that was given from chapter 13, where two beasts came up, one out of the sea and the other out of the earth. And thereby they are called the sea beast and the earth beast. And remember that earlier from chapter 13 over back into chapter 12, you had the presentation of the red dragon, who is identified for us as that old serpent, the devil and Satan. And so one wonderful thing about the book is that often these various characters and beings, monsters, beasts in the book are identified. They tell us who they are. I would have to say that there is fairly widespread agreement about the scarlet beast of chapter 17 and the sea beast of chapter 13. And that is that it is an imperial, a civil power, a world empire. As it was back in Daniel chapter 7, where you had four that would arise in the form of a lion, a bear, a leopard, and the fourth with a beast unnamed with an iron teeth, whereby he would crush and destroy. And all of these are used by Satan to harm the people of God, whether the Jews in Daniel and Ezekiel's day or Christians in John's day. But we have this added element in chapter 17, and that is a harlot riding that beast. And this harlot is identified as being drunk on the blood of the saints. And so it is not just alcohol or wine that she is drinking, but rather she is bloodthirsty. And she has martyred the people of God. We learned that earlier in the fifth seal back in Revelation 6. And so John keeps that message before us all through the book. And that they're being persecuted because they would not participate in the paganism, the polytheism of the Roman day. They would not, in fact, as cultics would do, worship a man, worship the image of the emperor. They made images of them, and people were compelled to give him honor as a god. Christians, of course, would not do that, and neither would the Jews, because they believe in one God. And so here we have a woman who is identified as a great city. The last passage in the chapter said, "And the woman that you saw is that great city that has dominion over the kings of the earth." And so if the beast is the empire of the day, the Roman Empire, the empire under which the kingdom of God was established, as Daniel 2, verse 44 foretold, then here it is that we have the capital city of that empire. It is also further identified back in verse 9 that the seven heads of the beast represent, in fact, two things in verse 9 and in verse 10. One is that they represent seven mountains on which the woman sits. And so it would be historically a city that is known remarkably and very quickly identified in such a way as the city built on seven mountains. And then he adds in verse 10, they are also seven kings. So he's talking about the capital of the Roman Empire, which is Rome. And Rome is that ancient city that was built on 7 mountains. We'll find out a bit later, in fact, in the very next chapter, that sailors and merchants are coming into the city, not only by overland travel, but also in the river, the Tiber River, one of the largest. It's the second largest in Italy. And they were coming in, buying and selling and getting themselves rich. And they didn't mind about honoring the gods of Rome, and neither did they mind as long as the money was flowing. They didn't mind offering a temporary homage and worship to the emperor. And so these merchants were coming and going. By the way, that is what is meant here about the harlotry, or the sexual immorality. That literally may have been also involved, as it was and is, in many of the worldly cities of the earth. But that's not the main issue. The main issue is the willingness of the earth dwellers, the ungenerated people, the non-believers, that they would be ready, for the sake of money, to have an exchange here, have an agreement, so that they can come and go, buy and sell in the great Roman marketplaces. And in doing so, Rome easily subjected these smaller countries round about. They gave their permission willingly to the authority of the beast in order for them to reap the riches that others in that city and those who had intercourse with the beast, what they also obtained and what they possessed. But when it failed, when Babylon the Great is fallen, then they're weeping because their means of getting gain is gone. It has perished. In chapter 18, therefore, gives us some additional insights into this city. It is obviously a powerful city because it rules over all of the other kings of the earth. By the way, Jerusalem cannot be that city. And neither can any of the other cities round about that might come to mind. But Jerusalem sometimes is pictured as being that great city instead of the holy city that belongs to God. And it's a huge mistake because Jerusalem was not built, even though it was built on a mountain, it was not known as the city on 7 mountains. And then to add the dimension of chapter 18, neither could you come sailing into the city of Jerusalem in ships or boats, buying and selling merchandise. Can't do that. But you certainly could and can, even today, with the city of Rome. Because of that second greatest river of Italy, the Tiber River, flows right among those mountains and right into the heart of the city. And so these 2 chapters are very helpful. In fact, it pretty well closes the chapter on the identification of both the woman who is that great city, that capital city, as well as the beast. There is no question, therefore, from Daniel 7, they were talking about 4 kingdoms from Daniel's day, from Nebuchadnezzar, who ruled over the Babylonian Empire, all the way down from the Medes and Persians to the Greeks and to the Romans. And in the days of these kings, the God of heaven will set up a kingdom which shall never be destroyed. Putting that together is crucial, it's important. And we ought not to go off generalizing and sermonizing about any worldly city. Other people have done likewise, yes. But this is historically and biblically anchored. And it ought not to be removed from that footing. Those who have a futurist view absolutely rip it out of that mooring and carry it off to another place. That would be any place where people are attracted by the riches of the intercourse with that people and that culture, and therefore leave the faith of the gospel. That's not what John is saying. John has it firmly anchored. And he does everything almost except spelling out R-O-M-E, which it certainly is. And those who think it is far off in the future, even now beyond our day, which would be 2,000 years almost from John's day, they would have the Roman Empire coming back into existence. And even with that ploy, it cannot be, because Daniel didn't say anything about the second occurrence of that fourth beast. It was the first time it occurred, and perhaps the only time. And so we need to be sure that we leave it anchored where the Bible does. And these are very significant statements that are made here about who the harlot is and who the beast is. Those who promote that it's the fall of Jerusalem, and there are some powerful voices that do that, both presently as well as in the past. For those who do that, they have a tremendous difficulty. And that is, the woman riding the beast is controlling the beast. That is, the capital city, Rome, controls the Roman Empire. Of course it does. It is very much like saying that Washington, D.C. controls the United States, or that the city of London controls, in their day, several decades ago, the British Empire. It's the center, it's the heart of it. But they would say that Jerusalem is riding that scarlet beast in the sense of it being carried away by it. That misses the picture altogether. John is making sure that we understand who the tyrant is, as historians and others, church fathers, refer to this one who was opposing the people of God, being drunk with the blood of the saints. One other comment that I would make is that from verse 9 and below, following, he said that these 7 mountains on which she is built or seated are also 7 kings. And so he's referring here not only to the empire as a whole, the imperial rule of Rome, but he's also referring to specific rulers. And he said, now, 5 of them are fallen. They no longer rule, they no longer live. And one is, and one is yet to come. There's John dealing with the number 7 again. And it may very well be, as some scholars think, that the one that now is number 6 in this lineup of the Caesars of the first century, that this is the one not so much under which these events occurred, but under which John saw these visions and later wrote about it. And so it could very well be, as some have pointed out, that this could very easily be number 6, the rule of Vespasian, that fairly good ruler of Rome. And then following him, Titus, who ruled for a little while, only 2 years. And then the other son of Vespasian in 81, after Titus, 81 to 96 AD, that he was that tyrant and known in history as the one who demanded of people to address him as Lord and God Domitian. That was the announcement that would be made. If you were in the amphitheaters of Rome and there was some sporting event where blood was involved, and there his entourage appeared and came in, they would announce him in that fashion. And so we're talking about a specific ruler here, and he does everything but name him. But the people would know rather easily who he's referring to. And you remember that he earlier said that who this ruler is, that it's based upon a number. The number 666. And it's the number of a man. And it's the number of the beast. And so John is making it very clear what is going on here, and that the saints of God are suffering. No, not off in some distant far land and in some other culture, some other city, some other day. Yes, those events surely could be repeated, and often are, as you have interchange with the various cultures of the world. And as you give your soul sometimes to the earth dwellers, to the ungenerated people. And in doing so, you likewise will fall as they did. But that leads us to chapter 18. And again, it is very specific in regard to the location, it being a city built on 7 mountains, and that there are also sailors involved, merchants in ships. And so John wrote, "And after this, I saw another angel coming down from heaven, having great authority, and the earth was made bright with his glory. And he cried out with a mighty voice, 'Fallen, fallen is Babylon the Great.'" Now, it doesn't mean literally Babylon. Often cities and even people, countries, will be used because they are notorious for something. Egypt, for example, is used in the prophets and in their writings, also in this book of Revelation, as a place of bondage. That's what it stands for, because of the bondage of the Jews in that land, in that ancient land. Sodom is mentioned by John as well, a place of grievous immorality. And so you have these names, Jezebel, for example, identifying just one person, and yet she stands for all who are like her. Doesn't mean literally Babylon here. It means a city like Babylon. Remember, Babylon was the capital city of the first beast of the Babylonian Empire under Nebuchadnezzar in the days of Ezekiel and Daniel. And he's now announcing the fall of that great city. Babylon is fallen. She has become the dwelling place for demons, a haunt for every unclean spirit, a haunt for every unclean bird, a haunt for every unclean and detestable beast. For all nations have drunk the wine of the passion of her sexual immorality, and the kings of the earth have committed immorality with her. Once again, figuratively here, intercourse in the sense of exchange in a matter of economics, of gaining riches while you sell your soul. And the merchants of the earth have grown rich from the power of her luxurious living. And then I heard another voice from heaven saying, "Come out of her, my people, lest you take part in her sins, lest you share in her plagues. For her sins are heaped high as heaven, and God has remembered her iniquities." Once again, can this apply to other cities, other places, and other cultures? Absolutely. But that's an application of something that was occurring in that day. And so if we lose the mooring here, if we lose our footing here, then we will be adrift and will not be able to understand the message of this great book. Yes, you can sermonize about it, you can do devotionals about it, and you can generalize. Just be sure that you understand the difference between the context and the application. Pay her back as she herself has paid back others, and repay her double for her deeds. Mix a double portion for her in the cup she mixed. And as she glorified herself and lived in luxury, so give her a like measure of torment and mourning. Since in her heart she says, "I sit as a queen. I am not a widow, and mourning I shall never see. For this reason her plagues will come in a single day, death and mourning and famine, and she will be burned up with fire. For mighty is the Lord God who has judged her." Now we need to remember when we get to chapter 20 especially, that that's what that judgment is about. It's the judgment of the beast. Now, can we apply it to a future judgment, the last judgment, the great one in the last day? Yes. But sometimes by the oft repeat of that application to the end time, we forget the place that it belongs here. In Daniel 7, when the great white throne was set up, and the Ancient of Days sat on it and judged someone, it was the first beast that was judged. And that's what he's saying here. For mighty is the Lord God who has judged her. And the kings of the earth who committed sexual immorality and lived in luxury with her will weep and wail over her when they see the smoke of her burning. They will stand far off in fear of torment and say, "Alas, alas, you great city, you mighty city Babylon, for in a single hour your judgment has come." And the merchants of the earth weep and mourn for her, since no one buys their cargo anymore. Cargo of gold and silver, jewels, pearls, fine linen, purple cloth, silk, scarlet cloth, all kinds of scented wood, all kinds of articles of ivory, all kinds of articles of costly wood and bronze and iron and marble, cinnamon, spice, incense, myrrh, frankincense, wine, oil, fine flour, wheat, cattle and sheep, horses and chariots and slaves. That is, human souls. And so he names here, just one after the other, the various items that were coveted by these merchants and how they got their riches. And sadly enough, the last one included there in that list is human trafficking, as has continued throughout the ages in history, of people making money in such a way as treating humans as if they were possessions, means of buying and selling and increasing the money. The fruit for which your soul longed has gone from you. and all your delicacies and your splendors are lost to you, never to be found again. The merchants of these wares who gained wealth from her will stand far off in fear of her torment, weeping and mourning aloud. Alas, alas, for the great city that was clothed in fine linen and purple and scarlet, adorned with gold and jewels and pearls, for in a single hour all of this wealth has been laid waste. And notice, and all shipmasters and seafaring men, sailors, and all whose trade is on the sea stood far off and cried out as they saw the smoke of her burning. Once again, it would have to be a waterway. It would have to be a means of coming into the city and buying and selling on a river. And such existed for that ancient city built on 7 mountains. What city was like the great city? They threw dust on their heads and they wept and mourned, crying out, Alas, alas, for the great city where all had ships at sea grew rich by her wealth. For in a single hour she's been laid waste. Rejoice over her, O heaven, you saints and apostles and prophets, for God has given judgment for you against her. That's what they were asking for under that 5th seal back in Revelation 6. How long will it be, O Lord, before you take vengeance on those on the earth, those that had beheaded the saints of God? He said, now it's happening. Then a mighty angel took up a stone like a great millstone and threw it into the sea, saying, So will Babylon the great city be thrown down with violence and will be found no more. And the sound of harpists and musicians, flute players and trumpeters will be heard in you no more. And a craftsman of any craft will be found in you no more. And the sound of the mill will be heard in you no more. The light of a lamp will shine in you no more. The voice of the bridegroom and the bride will be heard in you no more. For your merchants were the great ones of the earth, and all nations were deceived by your sorcery. And in her was found the blood of prophets and saints and all who have been slain on the earth. Well, that's the reading of chapter 18. And you can see how it couples itself in the discussion with chapter 17. That here he's enumerating the many items involved in the riches of that great city of the earth and how people had made themselves rich by it. But he also said in that city was found the blood of the prophets and of the apostles. They had all been slain, or many of them, in that city. Remember that Paul himself was beheaded there, and many others, because they would not accept the paganism of the day. There was but one God and one Savior, and they would not deny His name in order to receive the riches of buying and selling in the Roman Empire. You remember in Revelation 13, at the end of it, he said that that's what would happen if you did not have the mark, the identification that you belong to the beast. You would not be able to buy and sell in the Roman markets. One question that comes to mind is that this seems to be far-reaching. This seems to be the fall of the entire Roman structure. This seems to be the fall not just of the city, but of the empire itself. And yet it did not fall in the first century, nor the second, nor the third. In fact, It was in the 5th century when Rome, as a world empire, finally crumbled. And so how can we say that in that day the beast was judged and that people were wailing and crying because of the fall of that great empire? How can we say that when it was centuries away from John's day? It would not be coming quickly. Why seal up the thunders? You may as well have sealed them up if it's going to be another 400 plus years. Well, the best explanation I have heard of that, and I accept it as true, is that it need not refer to the final overthrow of the Roman Empire, but rather the tyrant, the beast here, one of the kings underneath and leading the Roman Empire, when that tyrant is defeated, when he is brought down, it can be said that it's the fall of that nation. And it must be so. Otherwise, you would have 400 to 500 years involved before the final demise of that beast comes. And therefore, the judgment that was pleaded with and prayers being sent up to God on their behalf. And then you had the answer given in chapter 8, the pouring out of the incense upon the earth with the prayers of the saints. And then you immediately began the thunders. No, they're not going, no more warnings. The 7 bowls of wrath are going to come. If you think about nations that have been tyrants and caused the death of many, in fact millions, say like in our day, in the middle of the 20th century, when you had tyrants in Germany who killed millions of Jews, 6 plus, and then 3 or 4 other million people, because they believed that they were designated and designed to become the greatest of all in the human race. And that those that did not have the blood of the Germans within them, that they were destined for death. Yes, they got by with it for a while in the 1930s, 1940s, and then finally Judgment Day came. And with the fall of those in leadership, among them Adolf Hitler, Adolf Eichmann, whom the Jewish leadership, after they returned to Israel, they sought him out. Mossad found him and brought him back for trial and executed him. And so with the fall of the leader, you have the fall of the nation. That's my point. Germany is a very different country today than it was about 100 years ago. And they're no longer permitted to pursue people like they did whom they hated. They're not allowed to do that. And I think with the fall of that ruler Domitian, that tyrant as he was called, you have the fall of the Roman Empire. Now, will the empire itself vanish from earth? Yes. And it did. But it took even centuries. But the tyrant himself came to an end, just as Nero before. You have these two being discussed in the book. That first wound on the head of the beast with Nero, and then the fulfillment of it in Domitian. A bloodthirsty ruler who demanded allegiance or else. And people starved and were killed and beheaded and torn to pieces with wild animals because of his hatred, because of his not knowing the God of heaven and earth. I'd like to end today then by reminding you of a passage I read just a moment ago. And it's this one, Revelation 17, verse 14. They will make war with the Lamb, and the Lamb will conquer them, for he is Lord of lords and King of kings. And those that are with him are called, chosen, and faithful. Thank you for being a part of our study today.